AskReddit by Faraj Eltara. What is a part of history that we consider to be a fact is 100% fake? The image of Roman gladiators fighting to the death. While there were many exhibition fights in the arenas where the goal was death, these were not gladiator contests. Prisoners, and the condemned, were thrown out to fight to the death, but not real gladiators. Training a gladiator was an expensive and lengthy investment, and having them die constantly would be bad for business. If a gladiator ended up dying in the arena, the guy who sponsored the games would have to reimburse the gladiator school. It was really more like choreographed combat than anything. Gladiators practiced spectacular but useless moves to make the crowd gasp. There's a very thorough and interesting display in the Roman amphitheater in Nimes, France that dispels a lot of these myths. That the Spanish Armada was destroyed. They did lose 44 ships out of 137. And the British also didn't beat them off with a small force. Their navy was actually significantly larger, with 197 ships, since they were joined by the Dutch Republic. A decisive defeat? Yes. A small English force overcoming and obliterating the might of the entire Spanish and Portuguese navy? No. Wasn't a good chunk of the Armada destroyed by storms before they made land? William Howard Taft never got stuck in a bathtub. I also find it weird, hilarious, sad that that's what he's known for, instead of being known for being the only person to have served as both President and Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. Ned Kelly's last words being "such is life." That was made up by the reporter. So many Aussies have it tattooed or have big stickers on their 4x4s. But I guess "oh well" doesn't have the same ring to it. I like "oh well" lol. Paul Revere did not run around Massachusetts shouting "the British are coming," because if he did, everyone would look at him like he'd lost his mind. Almost everyone in the colonies was British. He actually said, "the regulars are coming." The lore I was taught growing up was that the redcoats are coming. The lady who sued McDonald's didn't do so frivolously. She received third-degree burns from how hot that coffee was, and needed a skin graft. It was quickly found that that location was keeping the coffee well above the temperature you can legally serve a hot drink in a cup at. The fact that most people think this suit was over the temperature of the coffee, and not the debilitating burns that woman received, is one of the PR world's greatest triumphs. You are not immune to propaganda. It was actually found that McDonald's had all of their locations keeping coffee temps too hot. Multiple reports of burns were placed before the main incident and were just settled out of court and ignored by the corporation. The poor woman just wanted enough money to cover her medical bills and nothing more originally. That Einstein said the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. Don't believe everything you read on the internet. Albert Einstein. General public not being aware that classical Greece and Rome had colored paints all over those statues, much less colored dyes in their clothes. Edit. Point being, we tend to believe that there was a lot of white in the classical period, which isn't actually the case. Related to Rome, gladiators used to advertise for local blacksmiths who provided the armor and weapons. Ridley Scott intended to portray this in Gladiator, but left it out because he felt people wouldn't believe it. Ninjas dressed in all black to stay stealthy in the night or something like that. Ninjas dressed like normal people to blend in. The all black look stemmed from Japanese theater to make it more obvious to the audience who the ninjas were. If they wore all black, it'd be quite obvious and they'd stick out like a sore thumb. Edit. Most of you pointed out it also came from stagehands. That makes a lot of sense too. Of course they didn't wear all black. There were red, white, blue and later even green ninjas. Einstein never failed math. The rumor started from Ripley's Believe It or Not, and Einstein actually responded to them saying, "I never failed in mathematics. Before I was 15 I had mastered differential and integral calculus." He wasn't very good at the non-science related classes though and did fail French. I'm so confused about Einstein and Ripley's believe it or not existing at the same time. So many people completely misunderstand pre-industrial lifespans. The average age of death was 30 not because our bodies wore out faster, but because of how averages are calculated. A lot of people died as children. A much larger chunk of the population died in wars. If you got in an accident, healing without modern medicine was difficult. But for people who reached adulthood, and then avoided violence, injury, and plague, living to be 60 or 70 was pretty normal. It's the difference between average lifespan and life expectancy. Almost everything about the medieval times. Our image of it is highly influenced by Hollywood. Plug for the podcast We're Not So Different with deep dives on nearly every aspect of medieval society by Eleanor Janiger, PhD who specializes in the period. Fascinating stuff. That people use swords and axes all the time. Spears? It's spears. Most of human history has been spears. Vikings used spears. Samurai and knights used spears. Hell, bayonets exist because people felt you always need a spear, even with a rifle in your hand. William Blake said, when the stars threw down their spears, and watered heaven with their tears. Which is stupid. No one throws down their spear. Spears are great for poking people to death. Combat is all about hitting a person without being hit yourself. It's why we have been developing stuff to hit each other from further and further away. Marie Antoinette saying let them eat cake. Although as I recall weren't her last words actually an apology to her executioner for tripping over his foot. Romans indulged in food so much they had a special place to go and vomit so they could eat more. Maybe that has been dispelled by now but many still believe it. I've read Emperor Vitellius did actually do this, but as an exception rather than the rule. However, from what I remember the source for this was one of the dozen or so Roman historians who liked to make shit up for dramatic effect, so even if I'm not misremembering, there's still a good chance it's BS. This is a little niche, but it's been a long-held belief in the gaming community that one of Nintendo's business ventures before getting into the video game market was love hotels, hourly hotels whose main purpose is to knock boots in. This has been repeated as fact alongside their other historical ventures like playing cards, taxes, instant food, and toys. But last year a Nintendo enthusiast did a dive into their historical financial records and found no definitive proof that they ever ran or were associated with love hotels in any way. I've always heard they started out as a playing card company. I had never heard of the others. Interesting. A Stegosaurus fighting a T-Rex. They live millions of years apart. Stegosaurus 144 lived million years ago, T-Rex 65 million years ago. Insane difference. Still almost most every dinosaur related media places them together. There's a kids show called Dinosaur Train that does a good job showing the different periods that the dinosaurs lived in. The train is literally a time machine and they go through tunnels to get from one period to another. Lol, I thought it was neat that they cared enough to educate kids about how not all dinosaurs lived among each other. Whatever the fuck is on the History Channel nowadays. I know the exact moment I gave up on the History Channel. A guy came into a pawn shop with a uniform and said, "It's from the war with the Philippines." The guy in the shop said, "There's no such thing as the war with the Philippines." My undergrad senior thesis was on the Philippine-American War. Rabbits cannot live on a diet of carrots and fruits. It's like asking a toddler to live on a diet of candy. They also cannot live on a diet of completely lettuce and leaves, though it's close. Rabbits need hay for a healthy diet, and pellets are heavily recommended as well, though they also have limits. Should be in the bag according to the bunny's weight. Greens are good, not to be the main diet, and fruits or carrots can be given as treats. Bugs Bunny led a lot of people to believe rabbits live off of carrots. They do not. They will die if you expect them to live on a diet of 100% carrots. Lemmings just run off a cliff to their deaths every year. Thanks for that one, Disney. I watched the video of how Disney got us all to believe this. Can't remember where I saw it, but I wish I could remember. And I'm surprised more anti-Disney groups don't bring it up. That Hitler was a raging, shouting maniac in person. I think we want to believe that he would be that way because the idea that someone who was polite and low-key could be so evil is really disturbing. According to his personal secretary and many people who knew him, Hitler rarely showed anger and was subdued but friendly in private. Traudl Jung was there during the incident that inspired the scene in the movie Downfall that became a meme, and she said that she was completely shocked to hear Hitler raise his voice. She had worked for him for over 2 years. I think that's mainly due to his speeches and the clips of him clearly on amphetamines. Under God was not in the original version of the Pledge of Allegiance. https://www.documents/pledge.htm. The pledge was written in 1892. It wasn't until 1954 that President Eisenhower added under God in response to fear of communism during WW2. Also, when first implemented, during the pledge people raised their right arm forward so the hand was level with their eyes, directed at the flag. However, this was changed during WW2 because it resembled the Nazi salute. The procedure was changed to place the right hand over the heart. In Christmas Vacation, when Aunt Bethany says grace and starts reciting the pledge instead, she leaves out under God at the end while the others all say it. She and Uncle Louie are the oldest people there, so it kinda makes sense. There is a joke saying that Austria's greatest success is making everyone believe that Mozart was Austrian and Hitler was German. Wasn't Mozart from Salzburg? The Irish famine wasn't just a natural disaster, there was plenty of food in Ireland, it was just exported to Britain. Edit, clarity. Our staple food for most people was the potato, so the failure of the crop was devastating. However, yes, there was so much food being grown here that was exported. We were also as a people given the option to have food if we denounced our religion, leading to the phrase taking the soup. To take the soup was to denounce Catholicism and become Protestant. Edit spelling. That the Library of Alexandria being burned down set humanity back hundreds or even thousands of years. At the time that it was finally destroyed in 1948 BC, most of its collection had already been copied and distributed to other libraries and universities, or the important scrolls were relocated. It was no longer an important meeting place for great scholars either, and it's not entirely clear how much of it was even destroyed during the fire, as many believe that it was even partially rebuilt afterwards. It ultimately just fell out of relevance throughout the years and didn't really take any of the information stored within with it. I believe within reason that the end of Islamic Golden Age is much more impactful than the burning of the Library of Alexandria. An entire culture just ceasing to advance STEM is much more devastating. Bill Clinton did in fact have sex with that woman. Are you talking about sex or sexual relations? That Hitler had one testicle and Napoleon was short. Also that Himmler had two and that they were small. That George Washington had wooden teeth. He had false teeth, yes. But they were made of ivory. He never had wooden teeth. I heard that Methuselah had like 30 goddamn dicks. Not sure if quite at the level you're asking for, but it seems to be common knowledge that people didn't fight back against Germans in WW2, and it's because they didn't have guns or were cowards. They fought back a lot. The largest was likely https://en.m.wikipedia.org/wiki/Warsaw_uprising. It just turns out that normal people fighting against a military tend to do poorly. The Poles in general did a rather good job fighting the Nazis, but when they had to start fighting Nazis and Soviets at the same time, it became impossible. That after the first failed assassination attempt, Gavrilo Princip went to eat a sandwich at a cafe and Archduke Franz Ferdinand just happened to stop right in front of him. This is partially true. Ferdinand's driver really did make a wrong turn at exactly the wrong place, and Princip did get pretty lucky, but he hadn't just given up. The reason for the driver's confusion was that he didn't know he was supposed to continue along the Apple Quay to go to the hospital, and instead followed the original, published, route. Princip had gone there not to eat at the delicatessen, but out of hope that Ferdinand would come that way. Princip was given a full trial, with multiple witnesses. Nobody ever said anything about him eating anything, much less a sandwich, which would have been extremely uncommon in Serbia, Bosnia at the time. The myth likely originates from, of all things, a Brazilian novel about a 12-fingered assassin translated into English and published in the UK and US in 2001. There is no known account of the myth which predates this. Main source: https://www.smithsonianmag.com/history/gavrilo-princips-sandwich-79480741/ Edit: Sarajevo is in Bosnia, not Serbia, much to the chagrin of Princip's ghost, I'm sure.